What happens when a man with too much ambition, too much fire, and no fear of death decides he wants it all? In this gritty underworld of Prohibition era America, one ruthless gangster claws his way to the top, leaving a trail of bodies, broken loyalties, and shattered lives behind him. This isn't your rags to riches story. It's a cautionary tale soaked in violence, ego, and obsession. With machine guns blazing and moral lines disappearing, the rise and fall of this mobster isn't just thrilling, it's terrifying. His hunger for control takes over everything, including his own family. Hello to all the classic people that are returning. I'm glad you're back. I want to welcome any new visitors and let you know that there will be spoilers ahead. Today on Classic Movie Review, we are taking on Scarface, 1932. This film would technically be a pre-noir, but it is listed on imdb.com as a film noir, so I will refer to it as such. It's a good criminal rise and fall story within the vein of Edward G. Robinson's Little Caesar, 1931, and James Cagney's The Public Enemy, 1931. When I watched this film recently, I was amazed by how much of the plot was used in Scarface 1983. The second film, which was made over half a century later, had very few new ideas to spread around its graphic violence. No shade on Al Pacino, he's always the greatest. On imdb.com, this film has a decent 7.7 rating. On RottenTomatoes.com, the film has a damn impressive 98% on the tomato meter and 86% on the audience/popcorn score. Yeah, it's that good. When this movie was released, it was attacked by the general public. One positive review came from Variety on May 24, 1932, stating that, quote, "That powerful and gripping suspense, which is in all gangster pictures, is in this one in double doses and makes it compelling entertainment," unquote. And that the actors played, quote, "as if they've been doing nothing else all their lives," unquote. Paul Muni in Scarface 1932 completes the trifecta of early crime films with James Cagney's The Public Enemy 1931 and Edward G. Robinson's Little Caesar 1931. Actors. Boris Karloff played the role of ill-fated criminal Gaffney. It is always interesting to see the great actor of Frankenstein 1931 and The Mummy 1932 in diverse roles. Karen Morley played the role of gangster girlfriend Poppy. Morley was covered briefly in the horror film The Mask of Fu Manchu 1932. Paul Muni played the role of rising gangster Tony. Muni was born in 1895 in the Austro-Hungarian Empire in what is now Ukraine. His family was ethnically Jewish and spoke Yiddish. The family moved to Chicago in 1902 when Muni was 7. He worked in Yiddish theater across the Northeast. In 1908, he joined the Yiddish Arts Theater in New York City. Muni began working in English language theater in 1926. He worked on Broadway and made his first film in 1929. For this first role in The Valiant 1929, Muni received an Oscar nomination for Best Actor in a Leading Role. Muni threw himself into each role, including makeup and beards. I guess he was a proto-method actor, submersing himself into each role. To me, this tended to make his films great or terrible. He only had 23 films, but the majority of them were very impactful films. Today's film, Scarface 1932, was only his third film. This was followed by I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang 1932, The Story of Louis Pasteur 1936, The Life of Emile Zola 1937, The Good Earth 1937, and Juarez 1939. He was great in many of these films, such as in The Life of Emile Zola 1937, but he was so in character for Juarez 1939 that he was stiff and made the movie unenjoyable. 4 of the above films, I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang 1932, The Story of Louis Pasteur 1936, The Good Earth 1937, I will defer on the discussion of Yellowface, and The Life of Emile Zola 1937 were nominated for the Best Picture Oscar, with The Life of Emile Zola 1937 winning the prize. Muni was also nominated for the Best Actor Oscar for these films, with the exception of The Good Earth 1937. He won the Best Actor in a Leading Role Oscar for The Story of Louis Pasteur 1936. After Juarez 1937, Muni still had good roles such as Hudson's Bay 1940 and Angel on My Shoulder 1946. Due to poor health, Muni retired by the end of the 1950s. He received another Best Actor nomination for his last film, The Last Angry Man 1959. He died in 1967. George Raft, in his first significant role, was pretty solid as a coin-flipping gangster Ronaldo. Raft was born in 1901 in New York City.
Hey! I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
Both his parents had German and Jewish ancestry. The young Raft grew up in Hell's Kitchen, one of the toughest neighborhoods at the time. Like James Cagney, Raft was a very good dancer from a young age. Later, great dancer Fred Astaire attested to Raft's dancing chops. Raft was also friends with several people who later figured prominently in the organized crime racket. These relationships continued, and there was a constant rumor that he was backed up by mobsters. James Cagney said in his autobiography, Cagney by Cagney, in 1976, that Raft used his connections to stop a murder attempt against Cagney, who at the time was president of the Screen Actors Guild. Raft began acting in films in 1929. He had small parts and often played a dancer. His gangster role in Scarface 1932 put him on the path to play a host of criminals and thugs. A few Raft films that IMDb lists as film noirs include The Glass Key 1935, She Couldn't Take It 1935, Invisible Stripes 1939, Each Dawn I Die 1939, They Drive by Night 1940, The House Across the Bay 1940, Johnny Angel 1945, Nocturne 1946, Intrigue 1947, Johnny Allegro 1949, Black Widow 1954, and A Bullet for Joey 1955. For some reason, Raft declined the lead role in High Sierra 1941 and The Maltese Falcon 1941, which gave Humphrey Bogart his big break, and then later he declined Double Indemnity 1944, effectively derailing his career. Raft continued to make films, but the roles were not important. He was parodied or cameoed in Some Like It Hot 1959, Ocean's 11 1960, Casino Royale 1967, and The Cotton Club 1984. Raft was reduced to working as a greeter for the mob-owned Hotel Capri Casino in Havana, Cuba. Of course, this ended on January 1st, 1959, when Fidel and Shay stormed into town. Do you remember that bit being recreated in The Godfather 2, 1974? Raft died in 1980. Ann Vorak played the role of Seska, the sister of Tony, Paul Muni. Vorak was born in 1911 in New York City.
Hey! I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
She was born to Anna Lair, a silent film star, and Ed McKim, a silent film director. Vorak was a student at St. Catherine's Convent in Manhattan. She then attended Clark School for Girls. Finally, she attended the Page School for Girls in California at what is now Figueroa and Avenue 45. Vorak graduated at the age of 15 in 1927. She started as a child actor in the film Ramona in 1916 when she was 4 years old. Her last child film was in 1920. Vorak returned to film work mostly as a member of the chorus from 1929 into the 1930s. It was often rumored that she was one of Dracula's brides in the OG horror classic Dracula 1931. However, that was actress Geraldine Vorak. Ann Vorak's first big break came when she was cast as Seska in Scarface 1932. She appeared in the criminal thriller The Strange Love of Molly Louvain 1932. Vorak acted in G-Men 1935 with James Cagney, telling a very similar story to Scarface 1932. Her last major film was The Case of the Stuttering Bishop 1937, a Perry Mason film where Vorak played the pivotal role of Della Street. Married to an English actor, Vorak spent time in England working in the war effort. Her film career ended in 1951 when she retired. Vorak died in 1979. Story: the film begins with a warning that people must demand the end of the gangster era. Inside a nightclub on 22nd Street, Big Lou Costello, Harry Behar, has just finished hosting a night for the Ward Boys. One of the men with Big Louie mentions that Lobo, Osgood Perkins, is making moves on the south side. Big Louie doesn't care, thinking he has enough. After all the others are gone, Big Louie is gunned down by a man seen only in shadows. Of course, it is clear that the killer is Tony Comante, Paul Muni.
Hello, Louis.
The newspaper editor says that Big Louie is the last of the old-time gangsters, and this murder means it will be a 5-year turf war with lots of killing. Tony is in a barbershop covered with towels. Ronaldo, George Raft, is reading a newspaper. Ronaldo gives a warning as a car full of cops arrive. Both gangsters hide their guns in the towel bin. Detective Jurino, C. Henry Gordon, tells Ronaldo he is going downtown. Tony is a little harder to roust. When the towel is removed from Tony's face, he has a big scar on his left cheek. Tony lights a match on Garino's badge. This is the second best use of a strike anywhere match in a movie. Number 1 is when Sefton, played by William Holden, strikes a match on Duke's face, who was played by Neville Brand in Stalag 17, 1953, and there's a link below for that review. The detective slugs Tony for the match bit, and they are taken away. Down at the police station, the detective chief, Edwin Maxwell, reads off a list of charges Tony has faced in the past. They also say he is responsible for the killing of Big Louie for his new gangster boss, Lobo, Osgood Perkins. Tony says he was Big Louie's bodyguard and the two were very tight. The detective chief says they know Lobo paid Tony the previous night in a barbershop. Garino is getting ready to beat the truth out of Tony when the gang's lawyers bring a writ of habeas corpus. Have the body. Tony and Ronaldo walk out, mocking the cops as they go. Tony goes to see Lobo. Lobo is living the high life with his swanky girlfriend, Poppy, Karen Morley. Tony can't keep his eyes off the scantily clad female, but she couldn't care less what the two men are up to. Poppy mentions the razor cut on Tony's cheek. He responds that he got it in the war, World War I. This was a lie that Al Capone told, although he never served in a war. Capone was actually stabbed in a bar by a smaller man. Lobo gives Tony some money and says he will be working on a percentage from now on. Lobo also says that they will be taking over the south side. Tony mentions that he wants to challenge O'Hara on the north side. Lobo chews Tony out and says he will be doing the thinking. They decide that they're going to wait till after Big Louie's funeral before meeting with the beer distributors. Tony is more concerned with Poppy. Tony is now the number 1 boy to Lobo. Later, Tony shares some of the money with his right-hand man, Ronaldo. Ronaldo had waited outside while Tony killed Big Louie. Tony then starts bad-mouthing Big Louie, saying if O'Hara was so tough, he would have knocked over Big Louie first. Tony says he will be the boss of the entire operation one day if they are patient. Later, Tony has dinner at home. His mother waits on him as if he were helpless. Tony is grousing because his sister, Seska, Ann Vorag, is missing supper. Tony hears a noise and finds Seska with some guy's tongue down her throat. He runs the guy off and roughs up Seska a little like he was her boyfriend. He gives her some money to have fun. The mother is very unhappy, saying Tony's money is bad and will cause trouble. Seska says she will be fine. From her room, Seska throws a coin to an organ grinder's monkey, but Ronaldo catches the coin. Boom! They're hit by the thunderbolts, they're in love, and Ronaldo's gonna be like a monkey. The primate's name was Jocko the Monkey, and he appeared in the King Kong 1933 precursor, The Lost World 1925. Lobo, Tony, Ronaldo, and Angelo, Vincent Barnett, go to the First Ward Social Club, and you can read that as Big Louie's gang headquarters. They smash the door window, and Tony announces that Lobo is in charge. A few guys are missing. Lobo says he will make more money for the guys who fall in with him. One guy talks back, and Tony puts him down hard. The others fall in line. Tony is in charge of taking the orders, forcing the bar to take Lobo's beer. Tony visits the bars and forces the owners to take more than they need.
Tony's been taking 5. Well, you're getting 8 now, see, and you're buying from us, Johnny Lowe.
But listen,
Sit down.
I can't use 8 barrels around
I
here.
get you a hunk of soap, you take a bath in it.
Meechan and Berzini controlled the territory before Tony and Lovo came. The gang terrorizes other bars and even bombs one they can't get to come over. Tony and company go to the Shamrock Bar. There's an unseen gunfight inside before Tony and crew run out. Tony goes to a diner and tells Lovo that Meehan and Berzini have retired from the business. The newspaper reports that Meehan will live. Tony goes to the hospital with a bundle of flowers and kills Meehan. Failed hit on a Don, followed by another attempt at the hospital. Does that sound like The Godfather 1972? A flipping calendar and the sound of machine gun fire indicates the passing of time. Tony runs into Poppy and he continues to flirt with her and he asks her out. She tells him to get a girl of his own. Tony is trying to upgrade his image with new clothes, jewelry, and cars, but he is still from the streets. Tony reports into Lovo. Lovo is hot because Tony busted up a lakeside joint that belongs to O'Hara and the North Side. He tears into Tony about following directions. Tony says O'Hara is not tough because his headquarters is at a florist. As they leave, a speeding car throws out the body of Keach. There's a note attached that says, "Keep out of the North Side." Later, in an attempt at humor, Tony's dull assistant can't take messages properly. This happens a few times. Ronaldo comes in wearing a carnation. Ronaldo has killed O'Hara at Tony's orders. The intercom buzzes and Tony is told Poppy is on the way up. Tony takes the carnation from Ronaldo before he leaves. Poppy comes in and Tony gives her the carnation. She says that O'Hara was killed earlier in the morning.
They tell me O'Hara was killed in his flower shop this morning. Had you heard that?
Did Johnny send you up here?
Johnny?
She is setting herself up to be with the man who is going to be on top. Tony gives her a tour of his house, showing the steel shutters with firing slots on the windows. He shows her a cook's tour sign outside that says, "The world is yours." Poppy notices the amount of money that Tony has been spending on clothes and furniture. Tony begins to put the moves on Poppy, but he gets informed that the cops are downstairs. He shows her an escape route and says he will meet her at the 4th Street restaurant. Garino takes Tony into questioning about O'Hara's killing. In a warehouse, British gangster Gaffney, Boris Karloff, is unpacking crates of Tommy guns. At the same time, he says Tony is not going to run this town. Gaffney mentions that O'Hara, late of the North Side, had the guns shipped across the border. Gaffney gets word from one of his gang that Tony has left the police station and is being trailed. Gaffney orders the guns and the men loaded into cars. Tony and Ronaldo go to a local restaurant. Poppy is waiting when they arrive. Tony gets a call and sends Angelo, the comic relief gangster, to the phone. A parade of Gaffney cars roll by, riddling the restaurant with .45 caliber slugs. The shooters barely manage to hit anyone. Tony says that he could use a machine gun that you could carry. Ronaldo shoots a gunner and captures a dropped Tommy gun. Tony is excited about his new toy. When the group gets back to their headquarters, they find out it has been shot up as well. Lovo comes out wounded, and he's hot as a $2 pistol. Tony is ready to go against Gaffney and the former O'Hara mob. Lovo tries to stop Tony, but it's too late. He's lost control of his mob. Tony executes his machine gun attacks on many Northside joints and hoods. As the attacks in the north continue, the chief detective sends Garino to check a 22nd Street freight house where he thinks the machine guns are arriving in fruit boxes. The Northside gang is virtually wiped out. A scene is shown in a shadowy warehouse. 7 gangsters are lined up against the wall and shot with machine guns.
Come on, line up, you guys. Over there. All 7 of you.
What's the gang? The heat on?
Plenty. Face the wall. Put your mitts up. All of you.
This is modeled after the actual 1929 St. Valentine's Day massacre, where 2 gangsters dressed as cops and 2 other men arrested and executed 7 men from another gang. It is believed that the killing was ordered by Al Capone against Bugs Moran's Northside gang. There's also a pretty good movie about this called the St. Valentine's Day Massacre 1967. The story is told in a documentary fashion, It has Jason Robart as Al Capone, and the legendary voice talent Paul Frees does the narration. The cops pick up Gaffney and take him to the warehouse murder site. He says that 2 of the killers were wearing police uniforms. Gaffney is horrified by the dead bodies. He then hides out with a couple of hoods in a wrecked building. A reporter tracks Gaffney to his location. The cops then decide they need to get the newspapers to turn the public against the gangsters. The cops put pressure on the newspaper owners. The newspaper men think the problem is that new laws are needed. He recommends martial law, use of the army, and more deportations. That's insane. Tony, Ronaldo, and Angelo go to see the play Sadie Thompson. Tony goes outside for a smoke. It is not long until another gang member arrives to say that they have found Gaffney in a bowling alley. Tony wants to see the last act of the play. Finally, he agrees to make the hit. He leaves Angelo to report on the ending of the play. Tony has his gang surround the bowling alley. They slowly move inside as Gaffney bowls. They shoot down Gaffney in mid-stride.
Just watch this one.
Tony and the boys go to the Paradise nightclub. Tony joins Poppy and Lobo at a table. Poppy pulls out a cigarette and both men offer to light it. Poppy takes the light from Tony, showing Lobo has lost. A small gunfight takes place on the dance floor, but Tony is too cool to be worried. Tony's sister, Seska, puts the full court press on Ronaldo. Ronaldo tries to get her to leave because she is Tony's sister and only 18. Seska does a provocative dance for Ronaldo. She finally leaves mad and finds another mug to dance with. Over Lobo's objection, Tony and Poppy start dancing. When Tony sees Seska on the dance floor, he goes nuts. He punches the guy and drags Seska outside and then home. Tony threatens to kill his sister if she comes to places like the Paradise Club. Tony slaps her and tears her fancy dress. Seska runs to her mother and they go upstairs. Tony feels bad for not being smart enough to understand. When he goes outside, someone begins firing at him with a machine gun. Tony jumps into a car and flees. This works fine until the killers shoot out his tires. Both cars crash over an embankment. Tony escapes to Petro's store and is led inside by the owner. The owner helps, and Tony calls the Paradise Club to locate his gang. Neither Ronaldo nor Lobo is in the club. Tony eventually locates Ronaldo at one of his girlfriend's apartments. Tony tells Ronaldo to come to Pietro's. Ronaldo arrives and Tony suspects that Lobo ordered the hit. He pays Pietro to call Lobo, telling the story that he is one of the shooters and he saw Tony get away. Tony and Ronaldo rush to the office where Lobo is so they can watch his reaction when the call comes in. Lobo is shocked to see Tony alive. The call plays out as Tony expected and he knows Lobo ordered the hit. Ronaldo flips his coin. Tony whistles and Lobo knows he's gonna die. He begs for his life. Tony walks out and Ronaldo shoots Lobo. Tony goes directly to Poppy's place and has her pack a bag. He shows her the world is yours sign. Tony and Poppy go to Florida for a vacation. While they're away, Seska goes to the headquarters to see Ronaldo. She offers the whole dish. The newspaper reports say Tony is coming back to town. They also say the government is really trying to find a cause to arrest Tony. Tony goes to his mother's place where he finds out that Seska has moved out and is living with a man. Tony is enraged and heads to Seska's place. Seska has a really nice place with a full-size grand piano. After she sings, she and Ronaldo confess their love for each other. Tony buzzes the bell and Ronaldo answers the door. Before Seska can explain, Tony guns down his best friend Ronaldo. Seska freaks out, calling Tony a butcher. As she sobs, Seska says they were married the day before. Tony tries to calm her, but it's too much. The police issue a bulletin to have Tony picked up for Ronaldo's murder. Tony retreats into his house as some of his gang and the police have a shootout. Angelo is shot, but manages to answer the phone correctly before he dies. The phone call is from Poppy. Tony says, "I don't know." The detective chief orders Tony's compound surrounded. Seska comes into Tony's compound through the secret door. She has a gun and seems ready to kill Tony. However, when the cops surround the building, she starts begging Tony to escape. The pair cries and hugs as the police shine spotlights into the building. Tony and Seska try to exit through the secret door, but the cops are already moving in. He gives Seska a rifle and begins shooting his machine gun out the window. He is laughing like a crazy person as he closes the steel doors. A bullet ricochets and hits Seska.
You load him, huh?
Sure, I'll load him. I'm not afraid. I'm like you, Tony.
That's the way to talk. You're not afraid, huh? Come on, we show. Here. Yeah, put it in, Jessica. Put it right here. We show him. Hey, look at the monkeys there. They think they're gonna get Tony Camonte, eh?
Tony is scared of being alone. Seska shows contempt for Tony when she sees he is afraid.
I'm dizzy. Hold me, Tony. Don't let me get scared.
Listen, you don't understand. I'll be here all alone. You can't leave me here all alone.
Hey, Tony. You're afraid.
Jessica,
Don't be afraid, Tony.
you're all I got left. Little boy, he's gone. I should know he's gone. I'm no good without you, Jessica. I'm no good by myself. Jessica! Jessica! They're out there. They want to get me. They're all there. Jessica, they won't give me a chance, please. Jessica!
Gino wasn't afraid.
She says Ronaldo's first name, Gino, a couple of times before she dies. Cops fire tear gas into Tony's compound. Tony calls for Seska and other dead members of his gang as he chokes on the gas. Marino leads the cops as they storm the compound. Marino shoots Tony, and Tony begs for a break. Tony runs past the cops in his doorway and is gunned down by machine gun fire. He dies in the street as the "World is Yours" sign is shown. There was an alternate ending shot, but I've never seen it. In this ending, Tony is arrested, found guilty, and sentenced to death. His legs are tied together and a bag is placed over his head. The trapdoor is ordered to be released and Tony dies off screen. Comparison. If you've watched Scarface 1983 in the last 4 decades, it is clear that it took the best of today's film and turned the blood flow skyward. I'm going to look at a few points of similarity. Both of the Tonys were from immigrant populations. Tony Montana, Al Pacino, was a first-generation Cuban who arrived in the Mariel boat lift. Tony Camonte, Paul Muni, although it was never said, given his accent, was a second or third generation Italian immigrant. Tony's story is set in Chicago during Prohibition, when booze was illegal. Tony Montana's story was set in Miami in the 1980, when illegal cocaine was coming into the country at a phenomenal rate. Both men worked their way up in the gang hierarchy. But Tony Montana's story begins before he is a gang member. Tony Camonte is already a valued member of the gang when this story begins. Both Tonys have found a route to wealth through a product the government is restricting. As they rise, both men buy things to show their wealth and status. Tony Camonte buys things that will give him protection and items that make him seem classier. Tony Montana buys security items, but also such things as tigers. Both men are insanely ambitious, feeling they can never die and nothing can stop their rise to power. They are both ruthless killers. Their attitudes tend to harm everyone around them. Of course, the line of work they choose would eventually lead to their downfall. In both films, as the Tonys climb the ranks, they become interested in their boss's girlfriends. Both men obtained their goal, but had to kill their mentor to accomplish it. You might be able to steal Poppy, Karen Morley, from Lovo, Osgood Perkins, but I can't see how it would be possible to steal Elvira, Michelle Pfeiffer, from Frank or Robert Loggia.
Robert Loggia.
Can you spell that for me?
Certainly. That's Robert Loggia.
Both Tonys had a best friend and an unnatural attraction to their own sister. Tony Camonte's right-hand man was Ronaldo, George Raff, while Tony Montana's sidekick was Manny, Stephen Bauer. When Ronaldo married Seska, Ann Vorak, and Manny married Gina, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, the Tonys murdered their brother-in-laws before ever finding out about the marriage. Both sisters die in the final attack. In Tony Camonte's case, the final attack came from the police as they were trying to arrest him. In the case of Tony Montana, the final attack came from the Sosa gang. Both men had secure compounds where they assumed they would be safe. However, once alone, there was no stopping the attack, even with steel doors. My little friend, say hello to my little friend. Both criminals end up dead. There are some interesting similarities in the movies. The 1932 film was directed by Howard Hawks, while the later film was directed by Brian De Palma. Both of these directors were very talented and in top form when these movies were made. Screenwriter Ben Heach for the 1932 film was a former journalist who lived in Chicago during the Al Capone and Prohibition eras. Screenwriter Oliver Stone of the 1983 film, well, let's just say he's seen some stuff. All of the violence in the 1932 film was played out off-screen or in shadows. For the 1983 film, the limiters were off and blood was spraying everywhere. This includes a scene of a man being killed with a chainsaw. Conclusion. Screenwriter Ben Heach claims to have been visited by a couple of mob boys who were concerned that he was writing a film about Capone. Heach allegedly said the film was based on Big Jim Colosimo, and the use of Scarface was just a Hollywood trick to fill the theaters. The men reportedly left satisfied. This event would have taken place during the time Al Scarface Capone was being tried under the Volstead Act for tax evasion and other crimes. I'm not sure if this movie would be on his radar at the time. On IMDb.com, it contradictorily states that Johnny Lovo of Scarface 1932 and Don Corleone of The Godfather 1972 were based on Johnny Torrio, the gang boss who brought Capone from New York to Chicago. One thing I enjoyed very much in Scarface 1932 is that X's were shown prior to people being killed. They were as subtle as the X on a bowling score sheet for a strike, or more overtly as a shadow or lattice work. Like all old gangster films, this one had a lot of machine gun fires. These were the days when trained sharpshooters fired live ammo around the actors as they did their scene. So as you watch, when you see a chunk of brick fly off the wall, it was not done with an exploding squib package. The machine guns were never called Tommy guns in this film and were referred to as machine guns, bean shooters, and a typewriter. A sometimes used name for the Tommy gun is a Chicago typewriter. This film is one of 1001 movies you should see before you die, a book edited by Stephen Schneider. It was also placed on the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress in 1994. See it as soon as you can. World famous short summary? I'll quote Alvin York from Sergeant York 1941. Him that be a living by the sword will be a dying by the sword. Hey, if you enjoyed this show and want more, please give me a like, subscribe, or comment. It really helps the show get found, and I greatly appreciate it. As a technical note, references and citations are listed for each show on the site at classicmovierev.com. There's a lot of information at that site. Beware the Moors. In a couple of seconds, some boxes will pop up. The first one is another film review that I recommend that you watch, and the other box is a playlist of similar films.